Oh boy, this one's gonna be a good one. What's up guys, Eber here with RECON, and I finally got the time to build my very first Skylake-X PC. It's actually sitting right behind me. Now, building PCs isn't rocket science. In fact, anyone can do it. And if you've been following our channel for a while, we posted a variety of builds at different price points, but we really haven't approached the HDD market, specifically, what you could get with the best possible components out there, especially on the Intel side. Now, a couple weeks back, we did a video explaining to you the benefits of Skylake-X and the X299 platform. We talked about the processors and their respective specifications, along with compatibility for motherboards, memory, coolers, power supplies, etc. So if you've missed out on that video, make sure to check it out right over here. In this video, I'll be walking you through the components that I've chosen for this epic X299 gaming/workstation PC. And I've added a little bit of a twist to this build by making it as compact as possible, but at the same time also giving it as much as power as I can. And the end result is pretty staggering. I also wanted to take this time to thank Intel and the rest of our partners for making this video possible. And if you're interested in learning more about these components, I'll make sure to link every one of them in the description down below, just for your convenience. So yeah, sit back and enjoy the rest of the video.
Finally, an ultra slim body keyboard with mechanical red or blue switches, designed and perfected for work and play. The Tesoro Gram XS evolved to fit right in. Check it out below.
Okay, so there are three reasons why we decided to go with Skylake-X. First and foremost, we really haven't done that much content around this platform, and it looked like a great opportunity to test out its capabilities and what it can offer for our team members, especially since it's kind of what we do, and of course for people who might want similar needs. We're talking video production, advanced 3D rendering, enhanced parallelism through multitasking, and the list just goes on. Skylake-X CPUs offer a massive number of threads, plus the ability to reach higher clock speeds. The X299 platform is a flexible ecosystem that can offer you everything from an ultra high-end system to a compact ITX setup. You can go crazy with multiple GPUs, 3 or 4 M.2 NVMe SSDs within the motherboard, and then expand on that later on with an extension card. There are a variety of configurations you can go with, so let's check out some of the choices I've made for the PC, and some of them may surprise you. Kicking things off with the CPU, I chose the Intel Core i9-7980XE Extreme Edition 18-core 36-threaded monster. This is Intel's top-of-the-line CPU, sporting a base clock of 2.6 GHz that can run its turbo frequency to 4.2 GHz. It was primarily chosen for the sheer number of threads to aid our workflow, especially with Premiere and some other programs that we use. Plus, I'm interested to see how far we can push the CPU with overclocking. Speaking of overclocking, cooling the CPU is an important factor to consider because Skylake-X processors do produce a lot of heat, especially when overclocked. Even the slightest increase in voltage can increase the temperature output like crazy, so I decided to go with NZXT's X62 280mm AIO cooler and set it up as a push-pull configuration for maximum heat dissipation. And this cooler does look gorgeous with that infinity mirror design lit up. As for the motherboard, well, this one might surprise a lot of you, especially after looking at its size. Meet the MSI X299M Gaming Pro Carbon AC. Remember, we were looking to reduce the overall footprint of this PC, and for that, we decided to pick an mATX motherboard. But don't let that size fool you, because this motherboard has almost all the features Intel's Skylake-X platform is known for. Now, that doesn't necessarily make it fair to compare it with a full-size ATX solution, but this board should get the job done, as it offers 2 NVMe M.2 slots, support for 2 GPUs, RAM support up to 64 GB. The I/O is respectable considering this form factor, as you get a USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type-C and Type-A connectivity, dual Intel gaming LAN ports, and a great internal DAC. Once again, pretty dope for a package this small if you ask me. Now, memory prices are totally out of control, at least at the time of making this video, but throwing in as much as memory for programs like Adobe After Effects and other rendering suites can come in really beneficial. 128GB kits are extremely rare, and the MSI board doesn't support it in the first place, so I decided to go with G.Skill's 64GB Trident Z RGB kit, capable of hitting as far as 2933 MHz with the XMB profile enabled. And we also cannot forget G.Skill's gorgeous RGB illumination. It's one of the best looking kits around, and it's compatible with MSI's Mystic Light software for easier customization, which is awesome. Moving on to storage, We decided to use Intel drives since they're well known for their longevity and continual performance over time. In fact, my very first SSD was Intel's 520 series, and I used it to upgrade the stock hard drive on my very old XPS 15 notebook. Some of you may recall this was the L502X model. It was quite the experience. The performance increase was definitely drastic, and it's still staying strong. I've actually passed it on to my family members, and they're still using it just fine, and it's holding up really well. So Intel hooked us up with a couple of NVMe and SATA-based drives, as well as their Optane 900p series SSD. This particular drive is entirely based off a new storage technology called 3D Crosspoint Non-Volatile Storage, unlike NAND. In simple terms, think of it as stacking memory layers on top of each other in a 3D manner for the fastest bandwidth. You also get the best endurance, and specs-wise, this might attract a lot of enthusiasts out there. We're talking nearly 2.5 gigabytes per second on sequential reads and up to 2 gigabytes per second on sequential writes. This drive also shines in its low QD and render performance, and it uses the U.2 interface. Unfortunately, the MSI board doesn't come with one, but thankfully Intel has included a U.2 to M.2 adapter, and it comes in this 2280 form factor, which should work with the MSI board. This is an excellent option if you're using an mATX motherboard that doesn't come with a native U.2 connector, as you're not sacrificing a lot in terms of bandwidth, as the 900p is also using a PCIe Gen 3 X4 NVMe interface, and we'll be using this as our primary boot drive for maximum performance. For our storage disk, we chose Intel's 760p series 512GB NVMe SSD. It's got fantastic sequential read and write performance thanks to the 64-layer Intel 3D NAND technology. This should really help our editing workflow, especially with raw 4K footage. Our last set of drives for data storage are Intel's 545 series SATA-based SSDs. These drives offer great performance for the price, and we'll be creating a RAID 0 array using 2 of these drives. I'd highly recommend backing up the files stored on the array on a regular basis just in case, because if one drive gets corrupted, you would lose all the data. Now, we have decided to connect my local NAS as a backup solution, which should eliminate the stress off our shoulders. For graphics, we took it to another level by going with 2 reference GTX 1080 Ti's, and there are 3 reasons for that. One being obvious, extreme performance. This is probably just as overkill as you can get. 2, considering that I'm packing so much power inside a compact case, which I'll get to shortly, I wanted to exhaust the heat generated by these GPUs outside the case, and the reference cooler looked ideal for that. Lastly, if I were to throw in a custom water block for water cooling in the future, it could be a lot easier working with reference-based GPUs. Now, we understand that component selection is way out of price range for most people, especially with the high price of GPUs and memory these days, but we have done a lot of affordable builds. This time, we wanted to put together something cutting edge. Moving on to our case of choice, and this one interested me the most. We chose NZXT's H400i Micro ATX case primarily due to its native support for the MSI board we're using, but also for its minimalist approach in design. There's not a lot of aggressive elements, especially with the front panel, and from a feature standpoint, the H400i offers a spacious interior, support for up to a 280mm radiator at the front and top, so you could potentially build a custom loop inside, and it comes in a variety of color accents, and in our case, we chose this matte black finish with blue accents to complement Intel's branding, and that will be the theme for the rest of the build. Powering the whole PC is Seasonic's Prime Ultra Titanium 1000 watt modular power supply. It comes with an 80+ titanium certification for the best efficiency during runtime, especially under load, and given its excellent modularity plus the extra wattage headroom, this should provide enough power for the 18-core CPU as well as the 2 1080 Ti's. Now, I could have gone with the stock power cables that came inside the box, but I felt like it would be incomplete on a high-end build like this. So Cable Mod provided us with some custom black and blue cables to complement the color scheme of this PC. Each cable is sleeved with Cable Mod's signature ModFlex sleeving for vivid colors and supreme flexibility, and they're 100% heat shrink free, which ultimately leads to a clean and professional looking build. Not to mention, routing these cables are a lot easier than stock ones, and they have kits available for pretty much every PSU out there. It's 2018, so we've decided to add in some RGB flair inside the build. We're not going for the Candyland effect, I'm just not a fan of the rainbow colors, but I'd like to sync up every component to a uniform color output, in this case, blue, since that's our theme. So I've decided to use Thermaltake's Ring Plus 12 LED premium fans, and I've got the 120mm 3-pack variant. These fans look gorgeous with their 12 controllable LEDs with great light coverage, and they're really bright too. Perhaps the most interesting part about this set is the digital controller that acts as the central hub to both power and control the lighting of the fans, so you don't have to worry about 3-pin PWM connectors on the motherboard, and their 9-fan blade design allows for higher airflow along with quieter operation, which is perfect for a build like this. And guys, we weren't constrained by a specific budget for this build. We just simply wanted to put together the best possible PC with the components we had our hands on. But if you are looking for alternatives, you could opt for the 10-core 7900X and a single GPU solution like a GTX 1070. But coming to think of it, the mining situation is still going on, and I really don't want you guys to pay twice the price for a 1070. So I'm just gonna quiet down. So I've run into a bit of a problem. I guess I always do, because when building PCs, I always mess up something. Anyways, I just want to walk you through my experience building this PC, especially since, you know, it's got an 18-core processor, 2 GPUs, and it's overkill for a compact case, but it's also, it kind of pushes the case's limits and what it can hold. So first and foremost, cable management, that's important. So I tried my best to keep things clean, but it is pretty difficult because, especially if you're trying to use if you're going for a dual GPU setup, it's really hard to route the cables through this little cutout that they have here. So NZXT actually, it's pretty small, so it's only like a little square shape, but I tried my best to basically bring out all the cables I could within that cutout over there. So that was pretty challenging, and of course, the most important one is clearance. So this little guy over here is causing a major bottleneck issue when trying to install the GPU. So for instance, if I were to install the first GPU, I have to bend this little guy right over here to get the GPU in, and yeah, that's how you actually install the first one. The second one's not bad because it just gets in, which is really weird, but that was one of my concerns. Another one is, of course, taking a look at the back. So let's switch gears and move over to the back here. As you can see, it's quite the mess. Definitely not what I would expect from a compact micro STX case. As you can see, it's a little den of cables here. I definitely need a lot of work, or it definitely needs a lot of work. But it's also challenging because if you think about it, there's only so much room left to tuck away the cables. So it's really hard. So you have to probably just jam the side panel to get it all in. Another thing that I want to talk about is the air cooler that I mounted the front. So I decided to go for a push-pull configuration, so 2 fans at the front, 2 fans at the back, because I'm cooling an 18-core monster. So I'm using the X62 cooler from NZXT, so it's a 280mm radiator. It should be good enough, given that I'm doing a push-pull configuration. I'm hoping that temperatures will be under control, especially when overclocking, but I guess we'll find that out while testing. But here's the problem. The front dust filter actually doesn't fit because of how large these fans are. So if you're doing a 240mm radiator as a push-pull configuration, I think you should be just fine because the fans are pretty small, and the front filter should work just fine. But if you can, as you can see, it doesn't go through because the fans are just getting in the way. So what I've done is just basically just jam this thing in like that, and I'm just gonna Well, I'm holding the camera on one hand, but basically what I did is I just sort of eyeballed the alignment for the filter and the fans, and then I just jammed it in. So after all that hassle going through cable management and a few DIY fixes, the build is finally complete, and it definitely looks staggering, especially after configuring the lighting to dark blue. I've also let the GeForce GTX logo remain at its green setting, and I think it adds some contrast to the build, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the visual side of this PC in the comments. But overall, I'm actually pretty happy with the way how this turned out. I mean, think about it. This is an H400i case with basically the best possible components you can find on the planet, jammed into a micro ATX case. Syncing the RGB lighting was fairly straightforward. I'm pretty happy with the uniform color output with all the components. I used 3 different softwares, so NZXT's CAM for the AIO cooler, Thermaltake's Ring RGB software control for the Ring RGB fans and the LED strip, and finally MSI's Mystic software for the Trident Z memory kit. Okay, so I wanted to spend a dedicated video talking about the performance of this PC, but I decided to throw in a few benchmarks just to see what you can expect from a PC like this. So I took the stock settings that came out of the box and I did a little bit of overclocking, not the best overclock that I got, but I did manage to get the 18-core CPU to 3.5 gigahertz and the memory overclocked to 2933 megahertz, and you will see by the results that it really wasn't a massive difference. But anyways, let's go ahead and compare the results. Starting with Cinebench R15, running the CPU test, the 7980 Extreme Edition at stock settings scored well over 3,000 points, but with that slight overclock, it dished out 83 points more than the first one, so it's not a significant difference. Switching to OpenGL, and the results shouldn't surprise you. The two 1080 Ti's dished out well over 160 frames per second, and there wasn't a huge difference with stock and overclock settings once again. I also ran Blender with the BMW scene, and the system rendered that in 2.5 minutes, and yeah, there wasn't really a difference, not much compared to, overclocked. But what really surprised me was the rendering performance in Adobe Premiere Pro. I took a 1-minute 4K timeline and exported that to the YouTube 4K H.264 preset, and at stock settings, the 18-core CPU rendered it at 49 seconds. That's way faster than a 1-to-1 ratio. Testing it a bit further, I took a 9.5-minute 1080p timeline and I rendered it out in 4K, so basically upscaling the video using the YouTube preset, and the system completed that task in 8 minutes. Really proves how fast the 7980 Extreme Edition CPU is. The 3.5 GHz overclock didn't really do that much, but I intend to spend some more time on that, so stay tuned for our full analysis in part 3. When it comes to gaming performance, well, expect breathtaking frame rates. Battlefield 1 at 1440p set to high dished out over 144 frames per second on average. Mind you, this was tested with the DX11 setting as DX12 caused driver stability issues with SLI. Overwatch at 1440p set to Epic averaged around 295 frames per second. That's just insane. Doom at 1440p set to Ultra using the VULKAN API averaged well over 155 frames per second. And finally, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon set to 1440p at very high taxed out on both 1080 Ti's, giving us well over 100 frames per second. So 4K gaming is definitely possible with a system like this, especially with two GTX 1080 Ti's. So maybe I'll include 4K benchmarks in the next video, where I'm talking about the full analysis. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments down below. But I wanted to explain why the slight overclock didn't really help improve the performance. Basically, with all cores set to the same speed, there's a reduction with Turbo Max. So essentially, running at stock settings, the Turbo Max would allow the CPU to go as far as 4.2 GHz in lightly threaded apps like games. But when you fiddle around with the settings in the BIOS, that potentially reduces and creates sort of a bottleneck when it comes to hitting that max speed. However, there are ways around that performance reduction when overclocking, which we will talk about in the next video. There's definitely a lot of things to explore with this build, and I do intend to spend some time testing it in depth and going through different performance analysis and creating my own custom benchmark where I'm rendering a 4K video while gaming, while also doing some other tasks and comparing to my current editing PC. So yeah, definitely stay tuned for our analysis. So what are your thoughts on this Epic X299 gaming/workstation PC? Are you surprised with some of the component selections, or are there any alternatives that could have been a better fit in this compact micro ATX case? Let us know in the comments down below. Also, if you have any suggestions for benchmarks, let me know in the comments down below, programs that you may be using on a regular basis that you would want to see how well it could perform on this PC. Again, comments is all yours. I'm Ibor with Hurricane X. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.